Today, we're just going to talk really quickly about eating, like how many times a day should you eat? It's a question that I got a few times last week, so I figured that this would be a good time to scope about it. Thank you. If you are new to me, my name is Kiki. I am a personal trainer. I'm a strength coach. I am a trainer's trainer. I am an author. I'm also the co-founder of Eat More to Weigh Less, which Eat More to Weigh Less is an organization that serves mainly the over-dieted, metabolically damaged community. First and foremost, when it comes to how many times a day that you're eating, it really depends on whether or not you are a lean person with a very healthy metabolism, or if you are overweight or metabolically damaged and your metabolism is not up to par. That's the main thing that it matters up front. That's why you hear like different people doing it different ways, and that's why sometimes you'll hear me say things like that certain people shouldn't try intermittent fasting and things like that. It's not that intermittent fasting doesn't work for people, it's just that it's typically meant for someone who's extremely lean already and they're just trying to like get that like finish line weight goal type stuff. But other than that, it's really based on preference. It's based on your preference, how much you like to eat. Like if you don't like a lot of huge meals, then you're probably not going to want to eat, 7 times a day. So your preference matters, but also it matters whether or not you're able to get in whatever your end game goals are with your calories and macronutrients and stuff like that. If you're able to get those in within the amount of meals that you're trying to eat. So a lot of people, may not eat, if eating only 2 to 3 meals a day is making you not eat enough calories, not get in your protein, not hit your fiber goals, then maybe you need to try to squeeze in a few more meals because maybe you can't eat big enough meals to be able to get all that in. Or if eating multiple meals is causing you to go way over on your calories, then obviously maybe you would try to slow down. So it's going to be based heavily in preference and in whether or not you can, because metabolically there's not really a huge difference in a healthy metabolism for eating 3 meals a day versus eating like 6 meals a day. And that's because of the fact that when it's healthy metabolism, so when they're comparing that, they're looking at 2 people eating different amounts of times per day, but still hitting the same goal requirements. So that's when it changes, is if you're not hitting those goals, if you're not eating enough food, you're not hitting your protein, you're not hitting your fiber, then you need to reevaluate whether or not you're eating enough times per day. So when you're thinking about your preference, you want to think about, are you the type of person who likes big meals? So that's why often I'll say something like intermittent fasting is better for maybe guys, because sometimes they think it's like a joke to eat like multiple mini meals per day. It's like that's just not enough food per meal, so they'd rather eat 2 to 3 big meals. So that's where something like only having a few meals per day would actually help you. But for a lot of the people who have a hard time, they're just like, I can't get in all of my calories at the end of the day, or I can't get in that much protein, or I can't eat that much fiber, then it's probably going to help you to split it up. It's going to help you to say like, okay, if I need to get in 25 to 30 grams of fiber, if I'm eating maybe 5 meals with 5 to 7 grams of fiber per meal, then that's going to be easier for me to get in because I can't get in all that at one. Or the same thing with protein. Like if you're trying to get in 150 grams of protein or something like that, and you're only trying to eat like 1 or 2 meals, that's a lot of protein. So for most people, that's going to be really hard to do. So you have to think about it that way. You have to think, is that way of eating going to allow me to be able to hit those goals? And if it's not, then it's not going to be the same for you, metabolically speaking, as if you had spread your meals out throughout the day and actually hit them. So that's the reason why like a lot of people go to maybe with intermittent fasting, because they can eat bigger meals, or they like doing the 2 to 3 meals a day because they can eat bigger meals. But if your bigger meals are not meeting your goal requirements, then that's not helping you. Now, another thing that you have to be careful with is how it's affecting your body personally, how it's affecting your hormones. And this is where knowing whether or not you're starting off with a healthy metabolism matters, because if you don't know if your metabolism is healthy, if you've been dieting for like the majority of your life, then you probably don't have a super healthy metabolism. Or if you're severely overweight, you may have some insulin sensitivity issues. Now, if you're starting from that point of view, then it's going to make a lot more of a difference if you start skipping meals. So you have to pay attention to, if you're only eating a couple of meals a day, how you feel versus when you eat multiple meals per day. You have to check things like your hunger levels. Are you like craving things all the time? Are you really fatigued? Are you irritable and moody? So if you are super, super hungry, then maybe you need to eat a few more meals. If you're craving things because your meals are so spread out, then maybe you need to eat a little bit more meals. If you're fatigued all the time, then you may not be eating enough. So these are things you have to pay attention to, the signs that your body's giving you, because if you're the type of person who doesn't know maybe that you have some type of metabolic issues, then those are your signs that eating too few meals are actually messing with your hormones. So things like your hunger, your cravings, your energy, that shows you your hormonal balance. So you don't want to ignore those things. I feel better eating more often. My mood crashes if I don't. So see, that's a great thing to actually take notice of, because if you eat too little and your blood sugar's crashing, or you find like, okay, if I skip breakfast, then by lunch I'm like going crazy eating a certain amount of something else, then maybe eating breakfast would have actually helped you to fix that. So you have to pay attention to that. Or if you're testing out something like intermittent fasting, and at the end of the day you're binging on something that you probably only would have had in small amounts had you spread it out throughout the day, then that means that that style of eating is not working for you. And it doesn't just mean that you lack the willpower for, or oh, I just need to stop binging. It means that hormonally something is being disrupted. So your meals, if you don't have a healthy metabolism, then your meals affect your, I went out and ate a huge meal recently and felt awful after. Okay, so your meals affect your thyroid, your leptin levels, your cortisol, insulin levels, things like that. So being hungry and craving and things like that shows something happening with your hormones. So don't just think that, okay, if I just push through this thing, which a lot of us get that mentality because of dieting, like we expect some sort of punishment. So when we're really hungry, we're thinking like, I just have to fight it. When that's your body telling you something that you need to know. It's giving you a message up front, and you need to listen to what that message is, because those who don't end up with either thyroid issues or adrenal fatigue or something like that, or maybe aggravating something that was only slight in the first place because of the fact that you're eating either too much or too little. So that's why you have to pay attention to it on both ends. If eating multiple meals causes you to overeat because you can't rein it in and eat small portions, then spread it out. If eating multiple meals is causing you to overeat, then maybe you need to spread it out and have, bigger meals less often. So you just have to, women are so hard on themselves and guilty. Yeah. So you have to pay attention to all the cues that your body is giving you. And I'm going to do a separate scope that is going to talk about how to know if you personally should fast as well, because it's kind of the same topic, but it's kind of different. Because when we're talking about meal frequency, we could be talking about 3 versus 6 or 1 versus 6. So right now we're just talking about like 3 meals versus 6 meals. You just jumped in. Did you miss much? Okay, so a recap for anyone who's just joining. We're talking about how many times per day should you eat. And the upfront answer is that there's no black and white. It's a huge gray area. There's no one way. That's the reason why there's so much confusion. That's the reason why you hear like the media hyping one thing one day, and then another day, it's fast. Another day it's eat like 7 mini meals, and it just keeps changing. And that's because of the fact that the science is basically showing right now that if you're eating the same amount of calories and hitting the same macronutrient goals with 2 meals versus 7 meals, then it doesn't matter. But if you are eating 2 meals versus 7 meals and those macronutrient and calorie ratios are different, then it does matter. If eating more meals is causing you to eat too much food, then maybe you should eat less meals. if eating less meals is causing you to eat too little food or not hit your protein goals or your fiber goals, or it's causing you to binge and things like that, then you need to be careful. I'm driving you. Okay, no, you're welcome for the recap. So hopefully that clears that up. And like I said, there's a whole hormonal issue that's involved too. So it really, really pays to understand whether or not you have a healthy metabolism, you're already lean. Typically, that's the person that can just go based on preference. So that's why sometimes there's confusion, because with Eat More to Weigh Less, or anyone who's read our starter kit ebook will recommend that the person try having multiple meals if they can't, because in the beginning people are saying like, I can't eat that much food. So that's why we give that advice. If you can't eat that much food, then in the beginning it's better for you to just eat smaller meals spaced like 2 to 3 hours apart, so that you can train your hunger cues. Because you've ignored them for so long, they've shut down, and you literally can't eat enough food anymore. So we suggest doing that to train your hunger cues again, and then once your metabolism is healed, you can go back to eating however many times a day works best for your lifestyle. So doing it based on preference and lifestyle is going to be great when your metabolism's healed or you're already lean. But if you are, if you're overweight, you're metabolically damaged in some way, then often the smaller meals are going to help, because sometimes there's that insulin sensitivity, so it's messing with your hormones and your hunger cues are off. So it's hard to tell that person like, oh, just eat intuitively, because your intuition isn't even right yet. So that's why you have to understand both. So it's not just one or the other. It's not like just fix the hormones or just eat enough calories. Let your body show you based on those signs. If you're binging, if you have really, really low energy, if you're super hungry, if you're craving things all the time, those types of signs are showing you that the way that your style that you're choosing eating may be messing with your hormonal levels. So I don't know if that answered the question or not. Like I said, a lot of people have it, and there is no black or white, so I can't just say like do this for everybody, because it's going to be different. But I know, like for me, I have to pay close attention when I'm even hanging out with my husband all day, because he may be okay with missing a meal, but for me, the longer that I wait, like after a certain amount of time, like all I want is something that maybe I wouldn't have had, if I had been eating regularly. So you have to pay attention to that. Pay attention to how you feel at the end of the day. Pay attention to whether skipping breakfast and lunch causes you to binge all night, not hit your macros, not get in enough calories, or overeat and not hit your macros. If that's happening, then you need to spread it out a little bit more to keep your blood sugar levels stable. Another issue that I will bring up, only because I know that there's a lot of group instructors that tend to follow this channel, and that's the more you work out, you probably need to be eating a little bit more often. So if you're an athlete or somebody who exercises frequently, the more frequently you exercise, the more frequently your meals probably need to be. So if you're somebody who's teaching like 2 classes a day or something like that, then you're going to need to eat more than the person who's only working out 2 to 3 times a week. Because it's Jay Tata from Metabolic Effect. He has a great way of explaining it, and he says, instead of eat less, exercise more, eat more, exercise more, or eat less, exercise less. So the only way that you should be lowering the amount that you're eating is if you're lowering the amount that you're working out. So if you're eating less meals, or they're too far spread apart, and you're really, really active, or you're an athlete, or you're coaching somebody who's an athlete, they're probably going to need a lot more meals than your sedentary person that you're just starting to work out, 2 or 3 days a week. They can maybe eat a little bit more on their more intense workout days, and then less on the other days. But in the beginning, if you don't have hunger cues at all, then it's best to probably time your meals, have multiple meals kind of spaced apart until you get to the point where you're hungry regularly, and then just decide based on your lifestyle what works best for you. So if you guys have any questions on that, I'll be more than happy to answer them. If not, I will let you go, because I'm actually in the kitchen and my son needs to come in here and make himself some food, because he is an athlete and he tends to not eat enough. So I have to force him to eat in between. He's gonna be running out for a game. So if you missed, if you're just joining, then you can watch the replay of this, and we're just talking about how many times that you should eat, like basically like 2 to 3 meals a day versus 6 meals a day. And we're not just pinpointing intermittent fasting versus, 4 to 5 meals per day, but we are talking about that in a later scope. I will give you guys some tips on knowing whether or not you should fast, because it's very personal, and depending on your own metabolic state, it's going to be different. What are your thoughts on a sugar and all carb detox? If you're in agreement, how long? Detox from them if you plan on leaving them out for good. Other than that, I would recommend trying to develop habits that will help to balance that out. So I like to add in good habits to help crowd out bad habits instead of just thinking about removing the bad, because when we just focus on removing the bad, then it's all that we're focusing on, and you could be getting, like it could spike your cortisol levels and actually do the opposite of what you're trying to do. Now, if it's something that you have to do for, like, if you're like diabetic or your doctor's recommended you to like go keto for a certain amount of time, then that's different too, because you have to like do something immediate and fast in order to accomplish doctor's orders. Now, is less sugar better for most people? Yeah. So a great way to phase out of having so much sugar, if you think that you do have a lot of sugar, is to try to slowly increase your fiber intake, because having the fiber will help the way that your body is digesting those carbs. So instead of just doing away with all carbs altogether, start swapping out the types of carbs that you're eating so that your body is digesting them a little bit differently. That fiber is going to help slow down the digestion of the super fast carbs. And the same thing with protein, having some protein with your carbs to help slow down that digest, because when you're eating carbs and it's digesting super fast, that's spiking your blood sugar, and that's what you want to prevent. That's the reason why the sugar and the carbs have the bad name that they do. But if you start swapping those out and making smarter choices, trying to get in like maybe 5 grams of fiber per meal or something like that, making sure that when you are eating something with carbs, it has fiber in it, that's gonna, your body's gonna digest that in a different way than it would something that's all sugar or something that has really high carb and no fiber at all. So pay attention if you're getting things that have labels, especially to how much sugar is in it versus how much fiber is in it, if that makes any sense. So I don't know if you've ever, there's a thing called net carbs, and that's where you subtract the fiber from the amount of carbs to see like how many carbs are left. But you could also see if it has protein and fiber, then that's going to be much better for you than if it was just all carb. So I hope that helps you. So like I said, if the detox, if it's something that's like short term or something that you know that you can stick to, you're just going to have to be very careful, because if it's not, and it's something that you're just doing for like weight loss, then you're going to get like the quick water weight loss, but then you'll gain it back. And that's really, really like upsetting and discouraging on your journey. And you don't want that. You want to start making the changes that you can really, really stick to. Is there any truth to waiting a couple of hours to eat dinner to go to sleep? Well, there's actually a lot of people who believe in eating carbs before you go to sleep, because carbs help you to sleep. So, I eat carbs before bed, so it's one of those like hashtag carbs after dark. I'm that person. So you can actually eat them to help you to go to sleep, but if you are a person that's overstressed, it can affect it, because your body has to use energy to digest food. So if there's like a ton of food sitting in your system, then sometimes it can be hard for your body to digest it, but it's not extreme for most people. That's a common question that you get. Yeah, so it's not, like I said, it's not that big of a deal unless like you're just having like these huge meals. But think about it, a ton of intermittent fasters do it all the time. So it's really depends on, again, your own hormone levels and whether or not your metabolism is pretty much already where it's supposed to be. If it's not, then you're dealing with so many other issues that your body's kind of picking and choosing which function that it's doing. So if you guys just joined, the main recap is that how many times a day you eat is going to be based on preference, whether or not your metabolism is healthy or not, like whether you're a lean person that's healthy and fit already or an overweight person, and it's going to depend on your hormones and how either style of eating is affecting your like hunger, your cravings, your energy levels, things like that. So those things are always your triggers to let you know that something hormonal is happening. So you don't want to ignore those when either side. So if eating too many times a day is leaving you lethargic, then you may want to reconsider. If eating hardly at all, like eating only 2 to 3 meals a day is causing you to be lethargic or to binge, then you probably need to try to like incorporate a few more meals or something like that. And of course, you can always watch the replay if none of that makes sense, because I kind of went into a little bit more detail. And like I say, we are going to do a scope probably tomorrow or Thursday, where I'll give you kind of a checklist for you to know if intermittent fasting or alternate day fasting or whatever, like if you personally should fast, because that's kind of related to this topic, but it's a little bit different, so I split them in two. So thank you guys for joining, and if you have any questions that I did not get to, you can always tweet them to me at EM2WL or contact me on any platform. I'm everywhere as Eat More, number 2, Way Less, or at EM2WL. And if you have no idea about any of this Eat More to Way Less stuff and you want to get more information, you can go to em2wl.com/start, or just click the little Perry guy, whatever side of the screen he's on, and there's a link there that you can go to and get a free guide where I'll walk you through a lot of this stuff. There'll be like a actual little PDF guide and videos from me to explain why eating less and exercising more will backfire, because it will. So you can get more information there at em2wl.com/start, and I will see you guys tomorrow, and we'll talk about whether or not you should fast.